Hello and welcome. You are listening to an episode of the Sales Chat Show. To stream or download a host of further free episodes that will power your sales success, please visit saleschatshow.com. We really hope that you enjoy and benefit from this episode. So, hello folks, and welcome to another episode of the Sales Chat Show. This episode today is called Can AI Fix Your Sales Forecast or Just Make It Look Smarter? Make it look smarter. I can't even speak. This is not getting this episode off to a good start, but luckily I am joined by Mr. Anthony Steers and Mr. Steve Lindsay, the Sales Chat Show posse, and we are actually looking at some data here that has come from a report, the State of Sales report that Steve's organisation is involved in generating. And we've been taking a look at some of the data in there and having a think about what that tells us. And one of the pieces of data in the report was asking sales leaders what sort of impact they were seeing from using AI tools. And they were asked to rate these impact in terms of what impact those tools were having, and it was on a sort of a scale of 1 to 10, 1 with no positive, 10 with very positive. And also interestingly, they were asked to report what they were expecting the impact to be and what the actual impact was. And the specifics around the forecast accuracy is the impact was about 3.9, so not pretty high, not high. That's a fairly low impact. They were expecting sort of like 5 as a sort of as a positive impact, and that stimulated our thinking because obviously forecast accuracy very important for organizations to get right for a variety of reasons. But if sales leaders were hoping that AI might solve their forecasting problems, it looks like they're going to be a little bit disappointed. Now, we've dug a little bit deeper into why we think this is. And Anthony, you before we came on air to record this show, you said there's kind of 3 sort of categories of forecasting we might want to orientate ourselves around.
Yeah, well, I just think there's 3 areas where I think it's really significant and important to get it right. Obviously, we have sales forecasts, which we'll probably jump into at the end. But you've then got obviously the selling or purchasing of companies. If you're VC, PEs, obviously you have to work out. You do some calculations based on some of these forecasts. So obviously it's critical there. And then obviously we were talking about the world of manufacturing and actually how forecasting for them is even more crucial because you need enough widgets on the shelf to supply demand, but you don't want to have a warehouse filled with stuff that you don't need to house, basically. So yeah, it seemed to be sort of 3 really clear areas there where forecasting is massively important, and we are trying to get away from the consensus that forecasting is merely putting your finger into your mouth, placing your hand in the air and guessing what figures it could be. But now with AI analyzing all the data that we have, it certainly makes the forecast look smart. Is it much more accurate? That, I think, is the debate.
Well, apparently not according to the survey. Well, let's come back to why we think that forecast accuracy might be. But you listed those 3 there. And Steve, I know you've had some conversations, part of obviously, the events you run like National Sales Conference, Manufacturing Revenue Growth Summit, those sort of things. You've encountered and had conversations with some sort of VC, PE backed kind of organizations. And what's the kind of context there where you think the forecasting starts to get a little bit skewed? Maybe I'm being polite.
No, that's not a bad way of putting it, Simon. I think from my perspective, there's twofold. There's one from the event sector. certainly PE companies are very active in the event sector, but
Yeah.
also from National Sales Conference, we work with a lot of software and tech companies as well. Now, a lot of those organizations are VC or PE backed. Now, certainly as an event organizer, we're definitely in a safe space. We're not in a world where we're acting as a competitor. And so often you're privy to conversations between acquisitions which are going through, or organisations which are looking for funding. And I mean, the reality is, anyone who's looking to invest in an organisation, they're not looking to buy the organisation as it is now, because that's a pretty poor investment, because they're not going to get a return. They're looking at what the organisation is going to be delivering over the next 12, 24, 36 months ahead. So this puts added pressure on the forecasting. It puts added pressure on the leaders to be hitting the targets, which is then going to attract a particular type of investor. Pressure is only going to go one way. It's going to go constantly down onto the sales teams. Now, for the sales teams as well, they've got their own personal pressures. They want to be hitting their target. So, of course, the numbers they're putting in the forecasting may be a little bit I don't know how to put this. Trying to choose my words carefully here.
Light.
Guesstimated,
Yeah,
shall I say guesstimated?
because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. None of us want to fail. And I'm
Yeah.
going off piece a little bit here, and going back to when I used to do quite a few endurance events and things. If I put a big challenge out there, I would actually keep it to myself until I'd actually got a little bit of training under my
Yeah.
belt before I went out and shared that. Now, as a salesperson or as a sales department, you're not going to disclose absolutely every prospect, although you should, quite right. That's the whole point of a CRM system and forecast. You're not going to do that. And so as it moves further up the chain, it then puts the leadership team in a sticky situation when it comes to attracting investors. So there's various challenges here which everyone's going to face. And I think it all don't come down to whether it's those insecurities that, we can all drill this back to perhaps some human insecurities there about wanting to achieve the best you possibly can do for yourself personally, but also from a financial achievement as well, whether that's your commission going all the way up to the shareholders who want to get the best valuation properly for their organization.
I think it's a great point, because for example, technology, AI, fantastic, right? It's growing, changing all the time, right? Human nature, human insecurities probably still remains constant, right? And it's now just it's just a different context. But I think that thing with the VC and the PM, I was having a conversation earlier on this week, and somebody used a phrase I hadn't heard before, and they called it we're not. They said we're not forecasting. They're under a lot of pressure in the organisation for results, and they said we're not forecasting, we're force casting, which I think is kind of like sort of like to meet the expectations of the VC, PE, whatever. It's stuff is being shoved into the pipeline. The salespeople are forced to put things in or move things through that are not ready to move through. They oh you've for example, I don't know, if the criteria to move it to the next stage in the CRM or in your sales processes, you've identified and engaged with the economic buyer or something, whatever the criteria is, and the person hasn't. Be like me saying, Anthony, do you know who the economic buyer is? Yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
Sarah Jones.
Yeah, I found him on
Fantastic, right?
LinkedIn now. I've sent him an invite. Does this mean we can move it on in the
Yeah,
CRM?
that's it. So they're definitely interested, are they? Anthony goes, well, I've only had one conversation. Brilliant. Well, let's put that as qualified. And you're forcing things through, and we know what happens. It falls out of bed at some stage. It just kind of falls. So there's that, and
I
then
suppose,
there's the
I suppose you've got
manufacturer.
the
Yeah,
two elements there, Simon. You've got the forcing stuff through the pipeline to make the pipeline look healthier than it actually is.
yeah,
And then you've got, and I love the phrase used earlier on about the shadow CRM. As Steve
yes,
mentioned, as
yeah.
salespeople, there's certain opportunities and things that are bubbling away in the side. And you used a phrase just before we started recording about this sort of shadow CRM. And the reason people do it is because they don't want the information used against them.
Yeah,
Uh,
it depends on the culture you've created, I think, within the sales teams and within your organization. is, if they view sales management coaching as helpful and useful, they'll start to declare early stage opportunities. If they dive on it and suddenly go, oh right, well that's another 5 million on your forecast then, and you kind of go, no, this is very early stage prospecting. It's that sort of stuff, and like you say, it's insecurities, like Steve was saying. If I'm what I have is a very early stage perspective, interesting, promising potentially, but very early stage opportunity. Salespeople will keep that in their shadow
Yeah.
CRM, the Excel spreadsheet, or the notebook, or on a Word document somewhere until it's got to a level. And you can
Yes.
see this is when stuff
Well,
starts entering the CRM at a
well,
quite a
it's kind
late
of
stage, yeah?
it's interesting because salespeople are usually pretty optimistic. We're quite
Yeah,
optimistic bunches, right? So early
yeah,
stages, we're optimistic. The problem is that the people above then want to put confidence in it by putting it into a
yeah.
certain stage of the CRM. And there's a difference between optimism and confidence, I think, when it comes to putting that data in there.
But it's true. I mean, this goes back to what Simon said. It is a behavioural thing. It's a workplace culture thing because if you, as a sales leader, if a deal doesn't come through, yeah, okay, you want to understand why that deal hasn't come through. You want to have a conversation with your account manager, your sales executives, why it hasn't come through. But you don't want to be stringing them up
No.
because
Yeah,
deals do fall through. And I think this goes back to the culture. If a sales professional feels comfortable with putting this an early conversation into
Mhm.
the CRM system, knowing that they're not going to get dug out for it if it doesn't
yeah,
come
Yeah.
through, and that it all comes down to pressure. Now, whether that doesn't matter what size company you are, what role you've got, if you can absorb that pressure and knowing that your leader has actually got your back, and this goes all the way up. So you're looking at the managers up to the VPs, directors who are reporting into the board. It depends. You go up right to the very top. How strong, how confident are those leaders in actually absorbing that pressure? Because
yeah,
that will filter down, and then
yeah,
you encourage bad behaviours and bad traits and bad characteristics.
yeah. It's spot
Well,
on.
and a fear of what might be said and what have you. So it's interesting there because as you were saying that our manager becomes coach, and I think that that's where great sales leaders empower their sales team to go, well, let's brainstorm together about your last lost opportunity. Where do you think it went wrong? Almost giving you a bit of a sounding board and a safe place to reflect as to where it might have gone wrong, or sometimes it's out of the salesperson's control. But at least if you can put your finger on what that was, it might teach you something to identify earlier on with one of your next
Yeah,
deals. So hopefully there's a learning as opposed to a telling off and being graded for it. Like you say, I think if you feel safe talking to your sales leader about the lost
yeah.
opportunities and they want to help you work out the solution,
I mean,
then
we've done episodes before on win-loss reviews, right? Which you should always do, right? If you've won, ask why, discover why. Don't just don't pop the champagne cork, but losses as well. It's a really valuable source of information. Like you say, providing people aren't hung on it.
mm,
If you because you don't win everything in sales, right? Unless if you're listening to this and you win everything, please let us
mm,
know. We'll have you on the next episode.
yes,
With
yeah,
if you're winning 100% of everything you go for and you're in sales,
yes,
we
yes,
would love to talk
yes,
to you because
yeah.
we've never met one. We've never met one yet. And then that second sort of category, Anthony, you mentioned was particularly the manufacturing. So people who are
Mm,
going to like the manufacturing revenue growth summit and by the way, national sales conference, whatever it is, whatever your company is, you know, forecasts have a strong impact, positively or negatively, on business performance. As Anthony was saying, if the forecast is too high, you have excess inventory, which is tying up your cash flow, so on and so forth. If you don't have enough,
mm,
you're committing the awful sin of
yeah,
you've got an empty shelf. And if you're
yeah,
in retail, literally, I was in fast moving consumer goods selling Stella Artois into, big retailers and wholesalers, etc. And we had a really tight, disciplined forecasting process because you had to, right? Because the breweries have only so much capacity, and particularly at peak trading times, which many industries have, summer and coming into Christmas here in the UK, you had to be on top. So, twice a month, first submission, then you'd review it with your boss, the forecasting
Hmm.
manager, and the finance manager. And it was like, and although I would be challenged, although I would be, challenged and held to account, my memories of those they were very, very helpful. And guess what? Your second submission changed based on the conversation you'd had in that meeting, and
Yeah.
it generally became more accurate because you were challenged and supported to get
Yeah.
it right.
Mhm.
And they were very. It was very complicated because lots and lots of individual products being shipped. No,
Well,
and it's
it then
complicated
becomes
everything.
almost a team exercise doing this
Yeah,
forecast as opposed to the stereotypical sales forecast, which is go on salesperson, tell us how much you're going to make next month
yeah, yeah. And
or
there's
next
some there's
quarter.
some there's some data now. The interesting thing, actually, to which I think we come on to the sales, is that process that I was, absolutely entrenched in was very, very data and fact driven, right? So
Mhm.
there was good data going into the forecast. Now that's where I think if we move on to the sales, where I wonder if AI hasn't quite delivered the result leaders were hoping for based on your report, Steve. I mean, actually, interestingly, they were only expecting it to be like a 5 out of 10 impact anyway. I wonder if and actually it was coming in at sort of 3.9. What they realized is, and for me it's because AI, as brilliant as it can only work with the data universe I'm guessing that it's given. There are some
Mhm.
incredible AI tools that will sit in a CRM system and drag data and analyze it and show you things. I mean, incredible cross reference, really, really powerful stuff. But if it's working off dodgy data or missing data because it's in the shadow CRM or late data because it's only being put in, it can't, based on my limited knowledge of AI, it can't do a good job for you, can it? It's garbage in, garbage out, right? That fundamentally, I think, is probably the nub of it. It can't rescue bad pipeline data.
I was going to say, I think you're spot on there. Yeah, it's brilliant, and that was the thing I always remember telling people when they're going, "Well, I use a spreadsheet," and I go, "Yeah, but when you use a proper CRM, you can then start looking at analytics, and actually the trends then tell you stuff, okay,
Yes.
and you can lean into those. And absolutely, I think AI is brilliant at doing." Doing the best with what it's got and making it look and sound as presentable as possible. But yeah, absolutely right. And I think that's one area where the AI of the in the system may not be able to create you an accurate forecast, but the AI you use to help you get information into the system may
Mm,
be able to improve the quality of data that's going in there, which in turn will improve the accuracy of the forecasting.
yeah.
So I think if simple things, we've mentioned this on episodes before. We don't, as salespeople, I'm being a bit stereotypical here. We don't tend to love admin and updating our spreadsheet or updating the CRM system. So if we can start using note takers and AI to give us a summary of our conversations and the key action points and produce the information that then goes into the CRM, then hopefully more good data will be going into it, which will give AI a better chance of forecasting more accurately going forwards.
I mean, there's some great stuff, with I've seen systems which will um, give you a nudge when your opportunity has dwelled longer in a certain sales stage than the average for the whole of the sales team. That's great stuff to know, right? You're getting a proactive nudge that says, "Hey Simon, you really need to be looking at XYZ because there's a chance of it." Or opportunities that are pushed, the date, the close date gets pushed and pushed, and the data shows the more times it's pushed, the less likely it is to come in, which is also really powerful data insight for sales managers to coach around. If I've got you guys in my team and I find out Steve's doing something and Anthony's not, for example, or, not just Steve but the entire sales team, I now can really focus my coaching in with Anthony. Maybe I get Anthony and Steve to work together, and there's some mentoring going on, and that's based on some really good insight into success. Right? That I think is where it's really powerful. But it's the data's got to be encouraged. And I think it comes very right, Steve. Back to your point. If I feel insecure or threatened in some way by putting something into the CRM system, human nature says I keep it out the CRM system. And then where do we go? Right there, we've got nonsense in the CRM system.
Exactly. And just sort of building on to your point there, Simon, as well about, and also Anthony, about the admin side of things. I mean, no matter what role you're in, I don't know anyone who is there thinking, "Do you know what? I've got so much time on my hands at the moment." The challenge everyone is the fact they haven't got enough time to get things done. Now, if you can have your own AI EA, as it were,
Yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
that's going to make your life so much easier. And do you know what? They're not going to dig you out publicly because they're just reporting into the, as you said, son. They're just giving you a nudge. Have you up? Do you think you need to check in with this company, or you said this company is looking to close in the next couple of weeks, but you've still got it down as initial contact in your stage detail of your opportunity. So having your own little personal EA is there. That's your own buddy to
Yeah.
actually help you to get across to having more accurate forecasting. And I suppose I've got a question for yourself, Simon, for you, Anthony, obviously working in sales roles. As a salesperson or an account manager, were you ever rewarded for accurate forecasting, or were you only ever rewarded on like commission and deals done?
For me, commission and deals.
That was it.
Yeah, I was going to say forecasting wise, I don't remember. I remember being asked for forecasts, but I was young, optimistic, and would always be asking what my stretch bonus would be.
And is, it,
Basically,
is that something that should be considered? I don't know. I mean, of course, you don't. It's really easy to commit to a very small amount each month, but then if you end up bringing a bigger deal, then maybe, I don't know, do you get less commission for it? I mean, do you reward higher commission for more successful forecasting? I don't know.
I think Steve, it's a really, really interesting question, because also in your state of sales report, there was the commentary around from C level, wasn't there, around wanting sales activity to be better aligned with business priorities. And inventory for an inventory management is going to be such a key contributor to how profitable you are as a business. That would suggest to me very strongly that you should incentivize things in your sales team. Is behavior, obviously you incentivize behaviors you want to see, done more consistently and so on and so forth. And yeah, the number is always going to matter in sales. I'm not being that naive, but forecast accuracy would also say you'd have your salespeople in the CRM on it more often. So some research that I shared at the National Sales Conference last year was in my session was the Ebster research on the elite sellers, the 31% and what they did differently. And they were significantly more likely to update opportunities weekly. And in fact, opportunities updated weekly, 17% more likely to close. So that's because they're all over their forecast. So if they were incentivized to do that, then yeah. And interestingly, Steve, I was I wasn't, if I recall correctly, I wasn't financially compensated for forecasting accuracy, but it was such a high priority, as I mentioned, by those sort of two monthly rituals, and it was done in a fun way. Every sector meeting, we had the big reveal of the forecasting accuracy league table. And, it would start with the lowest person. And that's why I was really annoyed because I never managed to beat the forecasting manager. That's where that's come from. I can tell you. It would start with number 10, whoever was the lowest. And they would be sort of barracked and booed by their colleagues in a spirit of fun and paper. However, you definitely didn't want to be bottom of that list. I'm not normally a big fan of public league tables because I think but the culture, it
Mhm.
was a fun
I think
environment, but it would be going up, the tension would be going up to see how you did and how you went up. So
see,
not
I like visible
incentivized
league
directly.
tables. I was going to say I like the visible league tables, although with a lot of clients, and I sort of explain to them that the psychology behind it is actually it doesn't tend to lift the top as much as you think. You do
Yeah.
have some competitive people who want to win. It tends to lift the bottom because nobody wants to be at the bottom, particularly when it's visible
Mm.
to everybody. It's interesting though, Simon. Steve, back to your question. I suppose that my experience, particularly my earlier years in sales, was that bigger deals took longer. Okay, so you'd have the small deals. So you tend to say the small deals are the ones that put the food on the table, but the big deals are the ones you talk about down the pub. And they take a little bit longer, like Simon says. I think you end up nurturing and you have to update, and there's a bit more of a cultivating of relationships, I suppose. But I suppose to bring this back to the sort of the pipeline and the forecasting, if you have your CRM set up properly to map out your entire customer journey and it's accurate, okay, it then becomes quite quick and easy to see where you are as an individual or as a team struggling with what I like to call pipeline constipation. So where's the area in your CRM system that everybody's getting stuck? Because then you can actually work specifically on that particular element of the process. And this is where you can buddy up, as Simon said. If this is an area that you don't have a trouble with, Steve, and you're great at this element of the pipeline, if we work together, I'll be thinking, well, look, I've got everybody stuck here. I'm going to shadow Steve for a day and figure out how does he do
Yeah.
this. And I think that way you can have a bit more help in moving people through the pipeline. So going back to now incentives, if you map out the customer journey correctly, I just identify each one a mini step between each place in the process. If you concentrate on scoring pipeline points, just stepping people further forwards, then there is a way of rewarding people for making progress in their pipeline, even if they are not necessarily converting end sales where they're going to get their commission at the very end, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
No, you're
I've run incentives with teams where it's not just about closing deals and getting them across the line. It's about moving more people through your pipeline and closer to making a decision and disqualifying those that shouldn't be there along the way as well. So
That's
kind of a
that's
interesting bit.
um, that's leading indicators of success versus a lagging indicator, which is smart sales management and smart sales coaching. And also, you
Mm,
reference there as well, I think, is to qualification. So if you
mm,
have a better qualification process embedded in your culture, and Steve mentioned how important culture was, whatever it is, BANT, Medpic, Rampack, Spiced, as long as people are using something, that helps to manage overly optimistic or overly pessimistic sellers, and it means that your pipeline, they tend to be better qualified, more likely to win opportunities, or which ones to prioritize your focus on. If and again, that EBSTA research into elite sellers was whatever it was, 488%, I think, more likely to use a qualification methodology. So
mm,
we've got to encourage sales managers, and I think it comes, as Steve was saying, it comes from the top to improve the data going into the pipeline in the CRM system, and then we've got to manage that intelligently, and AI can therefore help with some of that to coach and use that as a valuable resource rather than a stick to hit people with. And it's going to come down to culture, isn't it, and then the environment, I think.
And just an education piece there for the sales teams to be aware of the impact it's going to have on the business. Like
Mm.
your stock management, your inventory, that's going to have a massive impact on. Okay, yes, they have impacts in terms of your own bonuses and commissions, because if you haven't got the stock in place, you're not going to be able to deliver on your customer. But we all know that resilient individuals and resilient companies will ride out storms. Now, just in the last few years, okay, we've got everything that's going on in the Middle East at the moment. We've had COVID. The companies which have been able to manage cash flow, stock, inventory, the ones being able to manage them the best are the ones which have been able to come through it, because they can actually take the hits. Now, going back to that salesperson who is holding back on that particular deal and they drop this mega deal at the 11th hour, which everyone's celebrating. It's absolutely fantastic. But then it's just wiped out all of the stock. And then
Yeah,
we go into COVID, or then we go into the Middle East
mm,
crisis at the moment. That company hasn't got anything to trade on anymore.
yeah,
So
mm,
it then goes to a resilience piece then, and it's looking going back to our earlier episodes, looking at what those longer term
Yeah.
aims and strategies are for the business. So I think it is an educational piece, and I know we'll touch upon this at a later date, but making sure all departments are aligned to making sure that everyone is all one cog of a very big successful team.
Of a revenue team. And I think
Yeah,
that is actually, and it's a really important point for particularly for sales leaders listening in this. It's the classic Simon Sinek, if people understand why it matters, not just because I won't get told off is why it
Mhm.
matters, or my
yeah,
why am I being asked to do this because my boss appears to be a real pain and just is forcing me. If they understand, like you say, the wider implications from a business perspective, we would hope they go, oh my goodness, right? I am critical, which they are, to this business's success, but not just in closing sales, in also helping the business to optimize itself and be resilient, right? To cope. It's a great,
Well,
it's a
you
great,
mentioned it earlier on. You want people who want to update the CRM system. They know the value in putting this information in. I always say information is ammunition. The more I've got note-wise written down from our previous conversation, the easier it is for me to get back up to the same level of rapport as we were last time, to move that conversation forwards, and to demonstrate that I listened and understood last time as well. So yeah, hopefully, I think people are starting to realize that data is massively important. And as
yeah,
salespeople, we might have lots going on, and lots of plates that we're trying to spin. But as much information that we have in our heads, we can get onto the system, the more information we're going to have at our disposal to then use later on. And I think that there's a short-sighted mentality sometimes in
yeah.
sales that hopefully will change as AI comes in and we're realizing the importance of data, but also having more tools to help us to collect and store and update the
if
CRM
if
systems too.
if we can just encourage sales teams to get that really high quality data into the CRM, then the incredible AI technology can do its magic, can make
Yeah.
those connections, can provide the insights which can then lead to specific actions for sales managers to coach and sales leaders to coach around and for sellers to take, and you can then optimize, the performance
Mm.
of the whole sales team kind of
Yeah.
using that. But I think it,
Yeah.
for
Well,
me, the nub of our conversation comes down to the kind of culture you create. And that's kind of incentives is
yeah.
part of that, behaviors, understanding, awareness is kind of, and like Steve was saying,
Mm.
how does it come down from the
Yeah.
top? So
I'm just feeling kind of lucky that I'm not in manufacturing, because the more we talk about this, the im more important it is in that world to get
yeah,
this right. And like you were saying, Steve, just that example of the 11th hour deal coming in, yeah, it gets celebrated by the sales team, but production are pulling their hair out. That's not a
yeah.
company who's going to thrive moving forwards as a team. Well, good job. There's an event coming up for the manufacturing leaders, right?
Is that Anthony? Anthony's giving the Manufacturing Revenue Growth Summit a plug the 7th of July in London. That was as unsubtle as I've ever seen
Yeah.
you do it, Anthony. Which is and anyway, folks, we don't make any apologies for that. This is the Sales Chat Show. We will be doing some selling as part of it. So it's the sister event of the wonderful National Sales Conference, which, as we know, is organised by our buddy here, Mr. Steve Lindsay. And Steve, if people want to get their hands on the report, State of Sales report, where should they go?
yeah. If they head to thegrowthhub.me, there's
Perfect.
a tab at the top called resources, and there's a drop down there, and you can download it for free. We do ask a little bit of information, not as detailed as your inside leg measurement, but we do want to know some information around your size of sales team, your job role, industry sector, because it helps
Mhm.
us actually build and develop our community, because then we'll be reaching out to you again for next year's report to find out what experiences you've gone through as well.
Brilliant. And it really is. There's some great stuff in there, folks. So I would really do recommend you go and grab that and have a little look at that. So that is wonderful. Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Anthony. And on behalf of the Sales Chat Show, folks, we would just like to wish you good luck. I was going to say good luck and good selling, like I normally do, but good luck and good sales forecasting also. As and your colleagues responsible for producing the inventory and managing it will love you forever. So why would you not want that as a salesperson? So until next time, folks, if you want to pop to the Sales Chat Show website, saleschatshow.com, you'll find all the episodes. We are available on all the major podcast platforms, so please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the episodes we have got coming. Till next time, good luck and good selling, folks. You have been listening to an episode of the Sales Chat Show. To stream or download a host of further free episodes that will power your sales success, please visit saleschatshow.com. Thank you very much for listening to this episode, and from everyone here at the Sales Chat Show, we'd like to wish you good luck and good selling.